Hi everybody, welcome to our first session of the Eventbrite series called Conversations About Change. I'm going to share my screen right away so we can get started. I wanted to make it a quick 15 minutes to dive into the topic of global access or traveling today, but then I will elaborate more. I'm super excited to see where everybody is from, so please comment in the chat, share where you're from, what you teach. I'm hoping to build a global community revolving education and just diving into this digital community that we're all accessing, but making it more education and global focused. So let me share the screen really quickly and we'll get started. Okay, so welcome to Expat Education. If you are new here, welcome, welcome, welcome. You will get a dive-in session first, and then I will elaborate more on how we can stay connected after this session. So there's a quote that I took from one of the courses that I made, and it says, "The more confident we feel about a subject, the better we feel with making decisions for ourselves and the world around us." So a big concept with Expat Education is to get practice in communicating and then feeling more confident in our abilities depending on what we're talking about, and then thinking more about for ourselves, of communicating for ourselves, and then also just that access to the global scope, which I've already mentioned. So let's get started. So this is a quick look at what we're going to be doing today and then in the following next 2 Thursdays at 6 p.m. So we're going to do a quick introduction of who I am, and then we'll do a session about conversations about change. Today we'll be focusing on travel, but then next week we'll be focusing on teaching and that teacher-parent alignment. And then the third week I'll be talking about tech, innovation, AI, all of that stuff that is probably on all of our minds of what we're going to be doing with it. And then also today and for the rest of the sessions, I'll be sharing more about the global community and resources that you have, experiential learning. So if we have time, I'll be sharing a video, and then some closing remarks to ask any questions and then just stay connected with each other.
One else but you. Baby, you light up my world like nobody else. The way that you flip your hair gets me overwhelmed. But when you smile like a dog, it ain't hard to tell. You don't know you're beautiful.
Okay, so you know that phrase that actions speak louder than words? That definitely happens through traveling. Sometimes I look back at all of the things I've done and I'm like, I can't believe I did that, but it's just the actions that speak for themselves. I would say that I love talking with people, but I'm not super extroverted in a way that I talk about my travel experiences all the time. So with videography and with photos, I found a lot of authentic ways to show my experiences, and yeah, not only for my own memories that I really cherish, but also for other people to understand. So throughout this platform, you'll be seeing a lot of my videos and photos and memories as a way to show you what our experiences really mean. So in the introduction here, I have a quick list of the places that I've taught. I've taught and mentored in 10 different countries, and I put the traveler section on there, not to brag, not to dwell in it. I'm not going to go through and read it all, but I really want to emphasize the importance of experiences. So whether you're in a place for an hour, a day, 2 weeks, a month, a year, those experiences add up. There will always be problems. There's always going to be confusion and just like getting comfortable and getting to know yourself, getting to know others around you. There's so much in experiences, which is why I'm so passionate about the platform that I've created, because children are just getting to this point of understanding that, of all of the access. For sure, it's more that they have more access now than they ever have. When I was a kid, I felt that disconnect of belonging, that I felt like I didn't belong where I was, and I had these questions, and there was like this disconnect. And I can imagine that's even more so now that parents or just that we all have access, kids have access to, that they know about social media or the news, or just how much things come into conversation. So I really want to build this bridge for parents and teachers to have something very stable and authentic based on real world experiences in order to have a bridge to talk about things. So I encourage you throughout this session to reflect on things that I'm saying. Maybe there's key words, maybe you want to write things down to talk about later. There's always going to be something that like pops into our brains, and that always happens with me when I'm listening to podcasts or I talk to a stranger on the street, and there's just certain words that stick with me that I really like that they said. So it's something that to spark conversation, to spark an idea, it means putting ourselves out there and, experiencing something new, listening to something new, sharing something new. There's a lot of vulnerability to be able to do this, but with this platform, I'm really encouraging teachers, parents, and students to just share their opinion, be okay with being wrong, changing their opinion, and learning more. So throughout all of my experiences, I've just learned a lot about adaptability and just having an open mind, because I've changed my mind, I've changed my direction, I've changed so many different things, and I'm sure you have too in your own way. But, really just getting comfortable with that. As you can see in this list, some of these flights I bought the day before I went, or a week before I went, or 3 months before I left. Sometimes we have this preparation and sometimes we don't. Sometimes there's certainty and sometimes there's not. But a lot of this is all about experience. So this is my introduction of just being open to new perspectives and new experiences. So conversations about change. We live in a world that's changing faster than ever, globally, culturally, and technologically. But change doesn't just happen to us. It's something we can help kids understand, adapt to, and lead through. That starts with conversation. When we talk openly about change in travel, education, and technology, we build awareness, empathy, and resilience. These conversations don't need to be perfect, but they do need to happen. Because raising thoughtful, curious children in a changing world requires us to think differently too. So today I'll be talking about travel and global access. So just as a side note, as part of the introduction from before of who I am as a traveler, and that's why I chose this for the first topic, because I think it takes diving into something to experience it. And I'm somebody who lives out of a backpack. I've been doing that for over 10 years now. I'm even like at home visiting family right now, and I just keep my backpack. So 10 kilograms is enough, and I like to keep it that way. So I've lived across the US. I grew up in Michigan, but then I've lived across 5 different states, and I road tripped a lot as a child, which I'm connecting this to conversation and to global access because I think, going back to such a young age, these memories, these experiences really impact us, and we don't even really know how. So the more that I'm investing in my business and my time and into clients and students and all these things, I'm realizing that these moments, whether my mom knew that she was packing like the perfect road trip snacks and making everything so fun and adventurous and all these things, really sparked something inside me that made me able to sit in the car or bus or whatever for a very long time. It made me comfortable to just look out the window, sit with my thoughts, have something to do. I always have like a book or a podcast or something ready to go. I'm always ready for like that in-between time. But those moments really, really shaped me as a child. And so I want to share that with you because that travel and that global access starts young. And how that changed for me was, getting more immersed with working at a summer camp and meeting more international people and doing my master's program abroad and meeting more people. And so there's just this like momentum that you're going to start to feel when you commit to something. And you don't even know what you're really committing to. Like, honestly, I didn't know I wanted to do my master's until I applied, right? Like this wasn't like a long-term dream since I was a kid. So you can see that like there's fluidity in our experiences and in our interests. And that's what I'm trying to share with you through my stories and just through access in general of other people and my platform and just everything that we have access to is like These are all these tiny, tiny moments. And if we take these moments to think bigger or just reflect, do something with the moment, then we're ready to meet the moment. And that can come through our communication skills and, advocating for ourselves and so much more. But that's why we're really going to dive into that travel access first. So let's rethink what global access really means. It's not just about travel. It's about how we talk about the world, how we see people, and how we invite our kids into conversations that stretch beyond their bubble. So, a challenge that I'm sure immediately might hit you is, well, I don't travel. People that I know don't really travel, or it's too luxurious, or it's just, for the weekend, it's not that far away. Like, there's so many different definitions of travel. So first, I just want to meet that challenge head first, because I understand that's relatable as well. But when you are connected with somebody like me who does travel a lot and who brings connections to, different cities, different places, different national parks, different experiences, then it does come up in conversation. So I know that there's a lot of concern of like, well, I'm not going to be the bridge. As a parent, I don't travel. As a teacher, I don't travel. And we get so stuck in our own story, not in a bad way, just in, we're used to that routine. But I really want to show you of how to be a bridge. And I'm being a bridge because I can't talk to everybody personally, but you can be a bridge with your community, with your kids, or with your students, or your school, or your team. You are a bridge. And so I hope that we're starting to visualize there's just like a bunch of ways that we're connected. And we might think about a spider web, or, maps, or bridges. There's so many ways to represent that. But we do need to realize that there's so many different perspectives. There's so many different ways to live. So just, having one person be the teacher, have one person be the everything, the story, it's just, to be frank, not enough. Like, they have access, they know about access, kids are talking to other kids, and so they're hearing things. So really, I'm just going to show you throughout this module that you are a bridge, and I'll explain those resources to make this more efficient just in your own time and not just coming to Eventbrite sessions, but you can have your own course, you can access it whenever you want, and then you can be that bridge. But I really want to empower you for the difference in perspectives that you're about to encounter, and just like that they could be slight, just being open to like slight differences, just getting our eyes ready to observe. I think one of my strongest qualities from traveling so much so far, mostly by myself, I really love that, is that I can be really present and I just like observe so much. And so I think that it's a strength because I really notice tiny things, and that comes from just the physical perspective of what I'm looking at, but also that internal perspective of how I feel and what's going on with like that connection of where I am. Okay, so I just want to let you know that traveling is so much more than a plane ticket. So let's learn more about that. Okay, so you don't need a plane ticket to raise a globally minded child. I think I was like 12 maybe when I got on my first flight, but I've met friends who were 5, and my friends are taking their babies on flights all over the place. So it's not like there's a norm. There's not a certain age that you need to be. There's certain babies who have been to 5 countries by the time they're 2, or you're a child that doesn't travel and you're 15 and you've never been on a flight. I don't want there to be a right and wrong situation about all of this. So I just say that because there's always going to be a range. No matter what we're talking about, there's always going to be a range. Okay, so you don't need a plane ticket. Traveling is just one access, okay? So real global awareness comes from exposure to different people, ideas, and ways of life. Global access isn't just physical, it's emotional, cognitive, and relational. And then I really want to just focus here quickly on the representation versus romanticization. So we have representation from books, from social media, from, just stories and people, just like there's just so many ways to learn about something. But when we romanticize it, we might think about the filters and the AI. Like, I use this picture because nowhere in Morocco is there a field of mint in these beautiful buildings. Like these are combinations of how we can combine our creativity. But when we romanticize about something, I really want to take a proactive approach for kids to see reality and see the filtered world, and that we're living in both. We have the technology to do both, that they're both digitally a person and physically a person, and everything in between with those experiences. So the postcards and passports can't teach us, experiences, but stories can. And I'm going to elaborate on that because postcards and passports are just like a material good, right? Just like a car. A car doesn't teach you to be a good driver. A car lets you be a driver, but it's the experience of driving that makes you a good driver or a bad driver. But it's, the material good versus the experience is different. Okay, so when you approach these conversations, you can be thinking about the actual experience. Okay, and having a water bottle is helpful, but that doesn't get me hydrated. Drinking the water gets me hydrated. Okay, so when you approach these conversations with your students or with your children, you can be thinking about what's the experience and what's the material good, and how can we distinguish that? Also, how can we connect and create more examples? When I'm teaching, I'm always looking for my students to add a similar example or add an opposite example, or just, checking that listening, checking that comprehension of what am I trying to say and how are they hearing me or how are they connecting with me? But again, we want the stories to express themselves, and that's all about experiences. So, experience as curriculum. So what do our experiences actually teach us? And I'm going to go a little bit into teacher mode for a second, because curriculum is experiences, more or less. And I know that that sounds very dull, but when I look as an educator, when I look at these curriculum goals, it's a lot of communication skills and it's a lot of just information processing, if I were just to sum it up. Okay, and that doesn't sound so hard, right? Just being able to express yourself. But then when you get very intricate about very specific situations, when you felt uncomfortable and your whole mind shuts down and you don't want to talk and your throat closes up and you just can't move your lips, right? There's so many ways that your body just like physically shuts down, even though like logically it's like, oh, I should be able to answer a question. But then physiologically as well, your whole body is giving you a different response. Right? And so that's why we really want to just be with the experience. Our experiences are everything. You might be on a beautiful vacation, but if you physically feel super sick, you're not going to have like the same experience as if you felt healthy, right? Our experiences are everything. And that's what creates the stories. So that's why I connected it like that. So let me give you an example of how I use my travel experiences to illustrate navigating discomfort, for example. So maybe you go somewhere and there's new norms, and either you're told that, like when you're in school, it's like, oh, I'm your new teacher and these are what I expect. And you get, it's like someone tells you what the norm is and you're like, okay, it might be hard, but at least someone told me and you can adjust, right? But sometimes you go places and like nobody tells you, right? And so you really need to adapt. And a lot of these videos, a lot of this experience is learning to adapt. And as somebody who goes to new places without knowing the language, without knowing anybody, I'm adapting all the time. So with this discomfort, I would even add, language barriers where I'm trying to go to the grocery store and buy something. And these situations get so particular because my experiences in Ecuador versus Romania versus Fiji, they're same concept, it's a store, but totally different experiences and feelings. So that's why I'm diving deeply into those micro moments. And that's what this course is really about, is what this platform is about, is just really being present with the moment. Another thing that you might try to illustrate with my experiences of teaching, and that you might do while you're in conversation, is that emotional regulation. So when you feel awe, or when you feel fear, or when you feel humility, right? There's these emotional regulations that, like, what do I do when I'm scared and I'm by myself versus what do I do when I'm scared and I'm with my family? Or, there's so many different contexts, again, that this emotional regulation is going to come up actually way more than you might realize. And this is helpful because they might not come up just without the videos or without the prompting, okay? So a lot of this is prompting because I'm a teacher, I've done this for a long time, and also I'm very familiar with these conversations because I always try and get my students to just connect with me on these real world experiences. So just a couple more that I wanted to mention that you might relate to through traveling, and that how that connects to a story, because our experiences are our story, is situational awareness, which I've mentioned, but things like social cues, safety, and empathy are important. So when I notice somebody's body language, when I can't speak their language and I notice somebody's body language, I'm starting to pay attention, right? Or if I notice if someone looks at me, or I notice if someone smiles at me, right? There's a lot of things that are nonverbal that I need to pay attention to, just for the sake that I'm present, and I need to look out for myself and just be like able to respond to people, right? So there's just like a lot of adapting yet again. And finally, conflict resolution. So that looks different in a first grade classroom to a fourth grade classroom to an eighth grade classroom. There's always like some kind of conflict, right? Or in your family, if it's like a Tuesday and someone's hungry versus a Saturday when we're bored, these conflicts are different, and we can approach that with a different lens. But just encouraging that, you know, dissection of what is the situation, and looking to ourselves. There's a lot of reflection going on in our platform, but, you know, just that the concept of misunderstanding something. And I'm going to just give you one more travel example, because I think it's helpful, just because we all relate to being hangry at home, or being overworked, or being stressed from, you know, being too busy. These are a lot of relatable things that I'm sure will come up in your conversation. But things like communication when I'm traveling, if I am, for example, I was working in Fiji, and Fijians are not confrontational at all. They're not in a bad way, but they just approach the problem totally differently. They would go about it way more calmly, and maybe just, yeah, indirectly. Maybe you can relate. Maybe you're more like that. Or the opposite, if you're more like a Dutch person. In the Netherlands, they're way more direct. And it's something that's so entertaining, and I value it so much, because I need to be more like that in my own opinion. But so now you have two different spectrums of communication skills. And so there might be a misunderstanding of, oh, well, they don't like me because they're not addressing me, or, oh, they don't like me because they're so harsh, right? You might start to just become a victim of these cultural differences, but actually you're assuming something. And what we learn through traveling and through interacting with people and asking questions is, like, not everybody talks the same way. How you were raised is not the same how someone else was raised. So if you ignore something, that's not the same reason why someone else would ignore something. Okay, so we want to just dive into these conversations very fluidly and comfortably, because these things happen, and that's kind of the goal of just making these authentic conversations, you know, personal in a way that we can connect to others around us, but also global, because people around the world are dealing with things like conflict and situational awareness. So that's why I say find the opportunities, be mindful of global access. Be okay with exposure, you know, to a certain extent. I'm not saying get on TikTok and scroll for 5 hours at all, but the exposure that there is a bigger world, there's things that happened before social media. Like, there were extremely talented, extremely wealthy people before social media existed. Okay, so I don't want us to hide behind what's available. Let's just expose what that actually means, okay? And you'll do that at your own comfort and at your own pace, but just keep that in mind as you start to understand what empathy is, and like how we all don't have the same access and we don't have all the same privilege, and traveling just exposes that so well, and that's why I'm such an advocate for it. So get connected with Expat Ed. I know we only have a few more minutes left, but you know, there's ways to get connected through Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, our website. We have a private Facebook group. We have a YouTube channel and Pinterest. I have gone down so many rabbit holes with these because I love connecting with people from all over the world for so many different reasons. I love that, you know, TikTok has longer monologues, and there's like a different patience for that, even though at the same time there's like, they are known to just flip. But for me, I have a different experience, and I really like the longer monologues. So that's how I kind of connect with that platform. But then Instagram is kind of how I started, and I like to give pictures or videos and then give you conversation pieces to reflect on or to share with other people. And I don't need to go into all of these, but if you're interested in AI and technology, mindset, and leadership, my LinkedIn, I'm very active to connect with other people. So feel free to add me. I would love to connect with you. And yeah, just keep us in mind, because we have so many ways to get connected. So just to give you some options of our resources. We have a live option and a recorded option. So I love to work with students digitally through Zoom. I would love to start a 10-week course with you. These are global conversation videos. So I'll give you an example in just a moment here, but basically both of them are structured in the same way. We talk about having an open mind, and that's when situational awareness comes into play of different ways that we can be open-minded, because I don't like blanket statements of we just always need to have an open mind. It's like, what does that really mean? Does that mean we talk to everybody? Does that mean we agree with everybody? Does that mean we understand everybody? It's like, no, 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 no. There's definitely situations that we need to think about. Is also enjoy the ride, which is, enjoying those short moments. So this is when I share my 1-minute travel videos to just really look at what does that mean to enjoy the ride, to enjoy these really small moments, because I want kids to be mindful of what their small moments look like. It's not comparison, it's actually really just like relating to people. So besides adapting as a big word that I've repeated quite a few times, I want us to relate. And then I go from that to being able to relate to like expanding that into having a basic to advanced conversation. So that might, a basic conversation would be like asking questions and making observations. And then we might get more, advanced, where we're thinking about emotions and situational awareness. And then we're growing our scope to something bigger. Okay, so there's no prep for any of this. The best part is like you can just dive into this and have that structure already set, and then you can relate as the conversation facilitator for the recorded classes. But then the journey, which is what I'll show you here in just a second, but that's more of the storyline of somebody else. I call them digital mentors, and that's 5-ish minutes of learning about somebody else and really just taking in what they say, because I'm a big advocate to learn from everyone around you. We don't need to agree with everyone around us, but we do need to adapt and learn and just like progress. There needs to be critical thinking and progression in this way so that we can really find out what we're interested in and what we don't like. There's a lot of opinion forming on this, which is really developmentally important for children, not only how they read and how they write and how they speak and things, but just how it indirectly impacts almost every interaction that they have. And then finally, there's conversation support from me, and I will share my educator and traveler perspective, but then just give you some prompts to dive deeper into. But of course, I always advocate for the students to like lead this conversation based on their experiences, their questions, what got their momentum started first, because this is not about us as adults. So like we can adapt pretty well, I would like to think, but get the kids like engaged and started. Let them lead, and then you can use my conversation support as needed. So I'll just give you a quick, oops.
Hello, hi, my name is Alejandro. I'm from Spain, from south of Spain. I'm from a small city called Cádiz in Andalusia. But currently I'm living in London. Today I'm gonna talk a little bit about the city, why I like London and what do I like the most. And here I am.
Okay, so this is a video, and he's talking about what he likes and what he doesn't like. And we could do this with apples and bananas. Kids are typically doing this in school. Apples and bananas I don't like, cats and dogs. But we are definitely beyond capable of thinking about other places, other people, and other concepts to actually expand that critical thinking. So I'll share this video, the full thing, in a different section because we're running out of time here. But what I really like is how personal it is. You can tell he has an accent, that he's from a different place, and that you still have an opinion. You're always going to like something, and you're always not going to like something. That's a given. So what I like is just, it's so approachable. Besides that that conversation module, I have a blueprint that's for kindergarten to 4th grade teachers and parents, and this is recorded, so you can access this. It also includes the global conversation videos, so this is like an academic and practical course. So the academic part is a deep dive into so much research that's just really foundational for you to just better understand where your child is at, and just the hard expectations that they have. Our world is evolving so much, but we do want them to be prepared. There's no grade, there's no test, there's no homework, but you having a very solid baseline of just your child's development, I'm just really passionate about that you can help them take the necessary steps forward just to empower them, because they don't actually know what's all ahead. And I love that we can help them and be a mentor for that. but that also includes the videos. So beyond what you're learning academically, I'm empowering you to just use it in the videos to just jumpstart that conversation. I also have coaching opportunities if you're a first-year teacher, if you are a burnt-out teacher, if you're looking for a community of teachers, any way that you're looking for some extra motivation and support. I do provide coaching opportunities, which I would love to talk about more in the future. I also do speaking and trainings, so my passion is about modern education via global competency. So in my opinion, learning from somebody who's lived abroad, traveled abroad, studied abroad, all of the things, that's who you learn from about living globally and thinking globally. We can conceptually think about the world and conceptually think about technology. We can conceptually understand things, but that doesn't mean we practically understand how to do it in a day-to-day basis. And so that's where I'm going to take my travel experience, but really push this into a practical use for students or for teachers, to look at this. What are these 21st century thinking skills? And then how do we progress with this with our students? So this will be a more personalized approach for schools. Any questions and remarks and questions, I'm open in the chat. You can follow up with that. I would love to connect with you. And then finally, thank you so much for your time. This has been so much fun, and I look forward to our following sessions. Thank you so much. Ciao for now.